So this is the input section to the Audient ASP4816. If we're recording, first thing we need to do is to select mic or line, and if the signal's coming from the live room, it'll be a mic input, so that button will need to be out. This here is our gain, input gain, so we'll need to adjust that accordingly. We're looking for the meter to peak no more than 0 VU. Down here we have phantom power plus 48V, so if it's a condenser microphone we can turn phantom power on, and we can see that when we do that we get a little spike metering, so we always make sure that the channel's cut when turning on phantom power, turning phantom power on and off, so make sure it's cut so we don't damage our speakers. Here we have what we call a high pass filter or a bass roll off, so if we want to get rid of any low frequency content then we just switch that in. That could be set at either 80, 100 or 120 Hertz. I'm not sure, I haven't read the manual, but that's usually where it's set. And this is a phase switch to check phase. So if we're using two microphones, such as two overhead microphones, we need to check the phase, so we can use that there. Now this button here, this will show us if a signal's coming in from the live room. So assuming that we've connected the microphone correctly and the cable's working and the mic's working and we've plugged it into the wall box and we've put phantom power in, if we need it on a condenser signal, then we should get something metering here. But this 2-segment, 3-segment meter doesn't really tell us very much about the level, the amount of level that we're getting. So if we press this MTR switch here, that flips that mic line signal onto this 20-segment meter, and we can then adjust our gain accordingly. So let's go through that again. Mic line, gain, phantom power, filter, phase. The next section here is called the routing section. This allows us to send the signal off to wherever we want to send it to in Pro Tools. We've got 16 bus routing section, so 1 through to 8, and press shift here to get 9 through to 16. So for example, if I wanted to route channel 9 to input 9 in Pro Tools, I go shift and press button 1 where it says 9 as well, and now the signal will be routed off to channel 9 in Pro Tools. We usually work in line on this console, which means that we route channel 1 to 1, 2 to 2, and so on, so that we don't get confused. So with the signal routed, we come down here to what we call the short fader, this fader here, or what's the Audient call the channel path as well. And this gives us level, not gain. This is just a level, and usually I just set these to 0 dB all the way across, and that then will send the signal off to whichever channel we're routing to. We can solo the signal, so we can listen to the signal coming into the desk, and we can cut the signal, but if obviously we're recording and we cut the short fader, we actually cut the level being recorded. So we usually cut with the other cut switch, which is down here, which I'll show you in a minute. These don't need to be in the mix. We don't need to hear these in the mix. And this should say at the top here, that should say mic, okay, because it's a mic signal coming in. Because you can flip these around, but that should say mic. So mic, short fader. Don't put it in the mix. Solo it, and you can cut it. So this is the long fader. This is what's called our monitor path or tape return path. So this doesn't adjust the recording level, unlike this one, which adjusts the recording level. This only adjusts the level, or the volume if you like, in our speakers in the studio. That's all that does. And we use this to get ourselves a nice monitor mix. So it's this fader that needs to be in the mix. We can pan left and right, we can solo, and we can cut. And of course, when we solo and cut here, we solo or cut the sound in the speakers. We don't cut the record level. So this should say DAW, there's pan in, we put it in the mix, we bring the fader up, and usually to about 0 dB to start with, and we start hearing the sound in the monitors. This is the master section, and on here we have our master fader, master left right fader, so that would need to be up. We have our main monitor volume. It's right in the center of the console, so we need to turn that up to here. Signal coming through. If there's any problems, if we see a signal metering here but not here, then that could be for a number of reasons. But if we see a signal metering here and we bring this fader up and the monitor button up, pot up, then we should actually hear a level. So we can cut our monitors, we can drop the level as well if we wanted to talk without adjusting the level here. We can dim the level, I think, by 15 dB. Over here, just above the master left right fader, we see we've got our talk back section, and this here FB is fold back, and here's the fold back volume. Fold back means that your voice is routed down that microphone and through to the headphones. So that's fold back. That's for a studio loudspeaker, and that's to record your voice onto the recording slate. But that's the one that gets used the most. So to set up headphones, we have our auxiliary section here, and just here we have something called QA and QB. So if we want to send out a foldback mix back into the studio so the musicians can hear what they're playing, we need to turn up these accordingly. And what I do is, on the master section, there's something called QA, which is a auxiliary master. I'm going to solo that, and what that means then is, as I turn these up, I can balance my headphone mix, because in the speakers, because it's in solo, in the speakers I'm only hearing my headphone mix. So I turn these up accordingly. I put these in pre-fade, which is this button here, and what that means is that the mix then is independent of these faders. So it doesn't matter what I do to these faders, it doesn't make any difference to the signal being sent into the studio, because it's pre-fade. The signal's taken before the fader. And that's usually how we set up headphones. We have them as pre-fade. So I turn these up, I listen to the signal being soloed and get a nice balance going on, and then back down here on the foldback section, so this is going to send the signal into the studio. I can send the speaker signal, and I've got foldback A, foldback B, so I can send two separate foldback mixes. In foldback A, I'm going to send QA, this one here, and if I solo and turn up the level, and I should hear something. If I hear something, then I know that the sound's now leaving the console. All I need to do now is to go to the patch bay and to patch foldback A into just underneath there where it says returns 201 headphones, and the signal then will be sent into the studio live room. So I've got other options here. I can actually set up, as you can see, I can set up two headphone mixes. This control room button, that actually sends the long fader path signal, so it sends your mix through to the live room, to the studio. Of course, that means that any changes that you make here will be heard in the headphones next door. So that's why we set up a pre-fade mix on QA. Like I said, if we solo it and we hear signal in our speakers, it means that it's leaving the desk. Of course, I probably won't hear anything in solo because my solo is turned down, so I'll have to turn it up a bit. So just to go over that again, so QA, QB, or auxiliary sends, used for headphones, we put them into pre-fade. Here, we make sure that the auxiliary masters are up, QA and QB, and then down here we make sure that we've got QA, QB being sent to foldback A. And finally, check to see if the patching is there.